Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs at the Club, brought to you today by Snake River Stampede Whiskey, but we'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the show. We're the Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network, coming to you live immediately after Idaho's 27-13 victory against Northern Colorado. It's Idaho's 7th win of the season, which, for all intents and purposes, gentlemen, locks up the playoffs for Idaho. Not that it was really in question, but that should do enough if Idaho somehow struggled to the end of the season. Still a playoff team. Producer Marten Heemstra, instant thoughts about this game.
A win is a win.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Brian, you've been on the shelf now for like 3 minutes. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so before we go through like, what went well, what did not go well, I mean, look, the big takeaway for me is the teams do have down weeks. Okay, that's back. Montana State last year almost lost to a terrible Northern Arizona team. This was Idaho's version of that. I think it's pretty safe to say this was Idaho's worst showing of the season. I don't think it's particularly close if you're comparing, from week one to now. And look, I mean, Idaho came away with the win. That's the big deal. If this is any team but Northern Colorado and Cal Poly, this is probably a loss. So, hey, it's okay. The rough effort came at the time it needed to. Idaho picked up win number 7 for the playoffs. That late pick for idiots who don't actually watch games will make it, the score is essentially doubled up. So maybe non-Big Sky fans who are part of seeding in the playoffs will not exactly understand the flow of this game and think of that as some sort of style points. But I mean, story for me is Idaho does a lot wrong and comes away with the W. So yeah, just like Crewhead 76 said, different. He says that's a 1915 small batch of disgust afternoon. Yeah, we're not opening the Snake River 1915 small batch, which we'll talk about later, man. But that's my takeaway, Dallas. I mean, they got the win. This was the team they needed to play if they're going to play like this. Please tell me that we don't see anything like this again the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's what I said, and I said it in our Discord. I think I might have even tweeted something that was very similar to it. It was the best day to have your worst day. Like, if you're going to go out and play complete dog shit like this, you do it against the worst team in the Big Sky. Like, hats off to Northern Colorado. Defensively, they did what they needed to keep Idaho from succeeding, and a lot of that was Idaho shooting themselves in the foot. But they did. I mean, they absolutely numbers-wise defensively looked way better than they have, averaging 491 yards against for their defense. They held Idaho to 326. Obviously, like you said, Brian, the pick six from Marcus Harris to seal it there is 7 points, but they held Idaho's offense to 20 points. Offensively, the Bears were about what was expected. They averaged 13.88 points a game. They scored 13. New quarterback today, Jacob Sermon, did not play. Pretty rough. They had 55 passing yards. So this is the kind of game that you like. If you're going to have a bad game, this is the team you want to do it in, and this is the kind of game that you just think, hey, flush this and never do this again. As T Cash says in the comments, Idaho never trailed. Win is a win. Like, it is very much true. Like, hey, they won. You move on to next week. But Brian, like you said, if Idaho plays like this against any team that's not Northern Colorado or Cal Poly, this is an ugly, ugly loss for the Vandals.
Yeah, and I guess it just something for us to take away as Vandals, because this is new territory for a lot of fans to have high expectations week in, week out that are for the most part met week in and week out by the team. Hey, back-to-back sellouts and then going on the road to Greeley. I don't like to put down other Big Sky teams for attendance because I want other teams to have better home environments. It's better for the entire Big Sky when more people show up. But
and we saw Idaho's attendance over the last 10 years.
Exactly. Like, hey, as Vandals, we've been there. It looked like there was maybe the Greeley stadium for UNC holds Nottingham Field holds 8,500 people, and it looked like 850 were in attendance or something like that. So, I mean, definitely low energy atmosphere. Jason Eck had described it in his press conferences as a BYOJ, bring your own juice. And well, I think about half the Vandals didn't pack their own juice, but again, it is a win. It's win number 7 for Idaho. The march to 9 wins and a first round bye continues. And that extra padding, I think, will not make this game be any sort of demerit on Idaho's schedule. So that I guess that's the big win before we start going through the rest of this, Dallas.
Yeah, guys, I'm trying not to freak out because that was the worst performance I think we've seen under the Vandals with Jason Eck as the head coach. It felt honestly closer to watching a Paul Petrino team than it did a Jason Eck team at times. As Crewhead said, 76 says we've got 2 more lower competition games. Got to get right and play what they're capable of. Absolutely, like. It was in all phases of the game was the issue to me. Offense was just disjointed. Defense obviously was allowing those insane amount of draw plays to actually work. Tackling was a bit of a rough spot. Personal fouls, bad penalties, just really sloppy in all phases of the game, guys. Just not a game you want to look back on and think about too much.
So for structure's sake, let's say we're leading off with what did not go well, Dallas. And you just hit a few of those. David Afari, running back for Northern Colorado. He is a good player. He's a guy who could start on a lot of Big Sky teams. He should absolutely not have accrued the stats he did, but on the game, rushed 18 times for 79 net yards, along of 16. Just good Lord. I hate the stats page we have to have up. Jordan Hornbeek rushes 5 times for 27 yards. Look, overall, you hit what Northern Colorado did. Is they had to move. They had to move the ball on the ground because their new quarterback. Good Lord. And I hate these stats things we have to have up. Shea Kuykendall goes 14 to 22 for 55 yards and a pick 6 through a late touchdown for Idaho. That certainly helped. But on the game itself, Northern Colorado rushes for 131 yards. Well, hey, Idaho rushed for 133 yards. So the Bears were pretty much neck and neck with Idaho in that regard. A lot of it to me, again, David Afari is a good running back, Dallas, but I feel like Afari should have been taken down and lost about 50-ish of those yards. He did make some people miss, but also like sometimes the Vandals just missed. It was in the in the opposite way that against MSU, we saw just absolutely dialed in best tackling of the year. That's not what we saw today. I think the Vandals really missed having Trey Thomas in this game, which just lets you know, like, hey, we've talked about depth at different positions. And hey, with the youth we have at linebacker, we really do need to have, for Idaho, if we're talking about playoffs, we need to be healthy at the linebacker spot. The young guys are good, but they're young. So we need that consistency. We need production from the senior leaders of the team as well. Other stuff that didn't go well for me, I'm going to say just offensively, not Giovanni McCoy's best game. He did throw that late touchdown to Hayden Hatton, and that was part of sealing the deal. McCoy on the game goes 18-25, a touchdown, 1 pick, gets sacked 3 times. Overall, he was 18 to 25 is 72%. So maybe like describing this as not his best game feels weird because he missed some shots early. Also, McCoy just threw into coverage a few times. This was early too. For example, like that very first long strike to Hayden Hatton, he overthrew Hatton. Well, he was into triple coverage. Like it was confusing to see that be Giovanni's call when McCoy has been so good for so long for Idaho. But I'm sure McCoy doesn't feel like this was his best game. That pick, the interception that McCoy threw that made it feel like this game might be in doubt. He was just behind on the throw. And hey, that happens. Guys miss throws. He's still a very good quarterback. McCoy still came through when we needed him. But I guess that's what I'd hit on not going as well. You hit the defensive side and you talk about the offense feeling a little disjointed. I mean, the game was weirdly never in doubt in my mind, Dallas, other than just being terrified after that McCoy interception that Idaho would turn the ball over. So the concern was that Idaho they seemed anxious offensively, Dallas. I don't know if that is a descriptor you'd agree with, but the confidence I typically have with Idaho offensively, look, they still marched the ball as they needed to, but I don't really know how to explain it in schematic terms or anything about how Idaho just didn't look like a team ready to execute offensively for the most part against UNC.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, we alluded to it a little bit. Obviously, the comment section rightfully roasting us for talking so much trash in the pre-show, but I am too, because again, this game truly didn't feel like it was in doubt. There was the moment when McCoy threw the interception, and hey, shout out to Ed Lamb, former Vandal, kicking a field goal down 7 in the fourth quarter, relying apparently on his defense to hold them, and then you think you score another touchdown or kick 2 more field goals. Kind of a baffling decision. They're not great, but other than that one moment, there was never a point in this game that I felt Idaho wasn't going to win, because it was very obvious the talent discrepancy on the field was insane. But Brian, it really felt like Idaho's offense just sleptwalked. Like we mentioned that in, again, very gently, like, hey, there's a chance Idaho sleepwalks this game, and it ends up becoming what exactly it was. Yes, Idaho won by 2 touchdowns, but it was not a 2-touchdown game. But it felt like every position was that. I thought the offensive line held up really well. McCoy took a couple sacks, but he did have a fair amount of time a lot of the time. But even Anthony Woods, there were a couple times where he'd have a Tony Trees moment and just explode, but then he would miss a cutback that he could have gone for 30 and instead was hit behind the line. It just maddening game, honestly, in all facets to me. The offense looked disjointed. I thought the defense, there were guys that looked great. I thought Exree Alexander absolutely looked like the best player on the team for most of the game, which is concerning that a true freshman is looking like that. But also on the other side, that's fantastic to see that. Again, I think Exree and Eck, the two of them are going to try to figure out a way to make that into a nickname. But those 2 guys are going to be 2 of the best linebackers in this, not only this conference, but in this league of football here very soon. You just kind of got to deal with those freshman growing pains. But Brian, it's tough to, it's a low energy game. Again, bring your own juice, but it's really disheartening to see there just wasn't a lot of heart there in that first half. It just really felt, like you said, anxious is a good way to put it. It was like nobody wanted to go out there and rip a throat out. And that's what you want to see from, again, a top 5 team in the country. You want to see them rip somebody's throat out. Go out there and beat the shit out of this terrible team. And instead you play down to your opponent.
Well, and okay, there's one facet of this game before we shift over to what went well. I guess I just want to at least enunciate, because if you didn't watch this game and you look at the box score, what you would see is So the UNC passed it 22 times for 55 yards. That's being shut down through the air. And okay, UNC could rush a teeny bit, but they averaged 3.6 yards per rush. It's like if you reference that to Big Sky leaders, there's only 2 teams in the Big Sky that on average hold teams to fewer than 3.6 or fewer yards per rush. It's Davis and Montana, Davis holds teams to 3.2, Montana 2.3. So that 3.6 number, if that's your average defensive output, you are the number 3 rushing defense team in the Big Sky. So like when we see those defensive stats, why do we sound so like down or like so just kind of relieved that Idaho left the game with the W? And I guess I think a better way for me to try to put a button on what did not go well is Idaho had a lot of opportunities to completely slam the doors on this game and just did not do it until that Marcus Harris pick 6, which was very, very, that was one of the last few plays of the game. I've talked at least about how relative to forcing turnovers throughout the season, Idaho just hasn't capitalized on opportunities. And that is a variable year by year. That not capitalizing on opportunities to me is kind of the story of why this game remained close. It was a lot of self-inflicted gunshot wounds on Idaho and a lot of missed opportunities. And, add that to UNC did come ready to play, and UNC took advantage of the opportunities they were able to get. That's how you have a game this close. That's how a team as terrible as Northern Colorado, prior to that pick 6, would have called you. I think you would have brain dead called this a moral victory for that Northern Colorado team. I don't know if you still could, just because of how deflated, man. Again, if you guys did not watch that pick 6, you need to see it, because the entire Northern Colorado team, they gave up. It truly looked like a 5-year-old boy. It looked like the entire team of UNC were 5-year-old boys who opened up clothes on Christmas with how there was no effort in trying to get Harris down. Credit to Harris for finishing that play. But I guess that's a story for me, is Idaho not taking advantage of opportunities in a way that we're just used to seeing them do this throughout the season, even in games where, it's close.
And you know what else is close?
I do.
An awesome trip with Hughes River Expeditions. If you're looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, don't look past your backyard. Like I said, it's close. It's right here. HRE's been vandal owned and operated since 1976. They're ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. There's the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River, the Salmon River Canyons. There's even the Selway. You can take special trips like the Percent Meteor Shower. You can do it, again, just you and a couple loved ones. You can take a whole work group and just, boom, have the time of your life. There's pristine beaches and pristine bitches if you work it correctly. Run amazing whitewater. There's hiking scenic trails. There's wildlife to check out. There's the beautiful natural hot springs. And again, guys, the most remote stretches of river in the entire country. Just bring your clothes. Let HRE handle the rest. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now, 800-262-1882. Again, 800-262-1882. Or check them out at hughesriver.com. Guys, I've left producer Marten on the shelf now for almost 20 minutes. I think it's time to, let's talk a little bit positive here, because we've been mostly Debbie Downers here. Yes, Idaho played poorly. I think even the coaching staff and players would probably admit not the finest showing after the win against Montana State. But what did go well today, Marten?
I think for me it was the defense. To have X-Ray lead the team in tackles. I think it was 13 tackles. I don't know the stats page right in front of me. I think it was something like that. Super stat director. Yeah, it was 13. Right. Awesome. To have that was good for me. That was kind of like the defense not to shit the bed and give up a touchdown when Giovanni threw that interception was good. Another good one for me. I think for me, I'm stumbling over myself, but just the defense, I think, was the overall positives for me.
Man, so Hayden Hatton had an All-American level game, which Hatton just hasn't had as many receptions as you would we would have thought, just because of how the offense has changed relative to start your expectations. But Hatton still is among the Big Sky leaders in receptions. And today, 6 catches for 104 yards and a touchdown. And Idaho needed all those. Hayden Hatton had that big touchdown. That was, one of the nails that shut things down from Northern Colorado. So again, Hayden Hatton looked good. And Anthony Woods, he was steady through this game. He rushes 23 times for 105 net yards, 4.6 yards per carry for a touchdown with a long of 22. So this is why, again, I said looking at the box score is going to be kind of weird and understand if you're listening to us and haven't watched the game, because there were some very strong individual performances. Seeing the 2 dudes who to me are brain dead first team all Big Sky guys on this team, and Hatton and Woods put up the way they did. That's what went well offensively.
Yeah. I mentioned Anthony Woods. It felt like there were a couple holes that he missed that he could have had well over 200 yards today if he'd hit some of those. Again, the guy ended up with over 100 yards today. Like this is nitpicking at its finest here. 23 carries, 105 yards and a touchdown, averaged 4.6 a carry. Like, you can't be upset about that. Like, guy had a good game. I did think, again, I thought the offensive line looked good. And again, this is against the worst team in the Big Sky. I also want to point out Matt Allen and Super George 111 fake punt seemed to change the momentum of the game. It absolutely did. Idaho defensively absolutely was closing the door on Northern Colorado, and then that fake punt kind of somehow broke their running game wide open, which was quite frustrating to see. But I did think offensive line looked better today. Obviously, Leighton Vining starting at center now that Eli Sanchez is out for the year. Abe Christensen was in at right tackle to start the game. Haven't seen that under the Eck era. But I thought that pass protection held up pretty well. I think some of those sacks were coverage sacks, unfortunately, and Vonnie just trying to make the best play he could. So I do think there's things you can point out. You can say, hey, good things happened in certain positions, but again, not overall what you'd want to see from the Vandals today, guys. A lot of the comments I'm not going to call it everybody because there's a bunch of them, but a lot of the comments here, it'd be really nice to stop playing down to opponents, and that is kind of what it felt like today. We're calling out individual guys that had good games, and I think, again, the offensive line had a pretty good performance, but it just felt like 45-50 points was out there for the taking, and the Vandals just didn't go get it.
Yeah, and I do want to hit the playing down to opponents thing, which I think that happened, but we do need to give ourselves a reality check because Vandal PTSD is real. And generalizing, from like the Petrino time into now is something that is pretty easy to do. This is the only time Idaho's shit the bed this year. Like, if you truly go through week by week, Lamar blowout, Nevada blowout, hung with Cal, beat top 10 Sacramento State. The Eastern game was a little weird if you want to add that in there, but that was also a game plan thing that would not repeat itself. Blowout Cal Poly. Look, Montana and Idaho lost by 2, but Montana's en route to a first-round playoff bye, guys. That's not a bad team. Beat Montana State, and now this. So, this has happened one time this year. I think it's completely fair to say, hey, this isn't gonna repeat itself. Like, Crewhead 76 saying this and Cal Poly were shit. Okay, but they still blew out Cal Poly, guys. So as far as a game long underperformance, this has happened one time this year. So I'm not losing a ton of sleep over this, other than just to say, hey, keep in mind there's a lot of young guys on this team. Every team plays up and down some, and with the amount of young guys Idaho does play, this is a reality of understanding who Idaho is the floor is a little bit lower at times than you'd guess. But that's also because we have impact freshmen playing in important spots. It's a problem and it's not a problem.
No, couldn't have said it better myself, Brian. This is just what is going to happen. Again, what we talked about in the perfect world was, let's see Idaho blow this team apart, put up 35 in the first half, and then play the second stringers the whole time. But it is important to remember a very good portion of the first stringers and quality contributors are guys that are true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, some level of sophomore, guys that have not been around for very long. This is going to happen. It's frustrating when it does happen because we've all seen that this team is capable of, absolute pure greatness. say what you will about Montana State and how that game ended, but at the end of the day, the win was the win. Idaho knocked off one of the 3 best teams in the FCS. There's no other way to say that. Idaho is capable of being a truly great football team. But because, again, you have so much youth, it just does tend to vary from time to time. It goes up and down. But
I mean, hey, Sam Herder in his most recent article, now he's presuming that Montana doesn't win out and that the Grizz are either going to lose to Sac State or they're going to lose to Montana State. He expects them to go 1-1 in that. In that scenario, Sam Herder has Idaho as the 2 seed in the playoffs. So I guess that's part of why the tone for this to me is so weird, and how to understand this game is weird. I think, look, I had a friend message me a second ago saying, I'm going to paraphrase, it looks like Idaho was hungover from the Montana State game. Like there was a lot of celebration, a lot of personal enthusiasm for, hey, one of the biggest wins in program history, and they just weren't ready for it. And we got a letdown game, but hey, Idaho won the letdown game, guys. We almost doubled up the team in the letdown game. This was, I not to step on Tuesday's episode, which we will record on Tuesday. Never passing more than 5 yards for UNC this will be a great scrimmage, you could say, for what Weber State does. So Idaho's got a little extra practice there. But I don't know, like we're personally disjointed even talking about this game now, because we're talking about the stuff that went well. Defensively, what went well to me is look, Marten already hit Exree Alexander, freshman, playing quite well. But again, like, look at the individual game stats. Idaho did shut down UNC through the air, and UNC wasn't that overall effective running the football. So there, I mean, like, this was an overall solid outing. If we had these stats with a more cohesive offensive effort against virtually any other team, we'd be expecting a blowout.
Yeah, I think Super George, George, I don't know if it's 111 or 111. I don't know how you pronounce that. I guess it really doesn't matter. What went wrong? Jack Lane's playing time. And then the second comment, I guess it's good we can complain this much about a win. Like that is very important to remember here. We're complaining about this because we've seen the Vandals operating at the peak of their powers, and it should be a game that they win 50 to 60 points. Like, this should be an absolute ass kicking from the minute the first kick happens, but it didn't happen. And when it doesn't happen, you can complain about it a little bit, because again, we have seen this team this year is not the type of team that should have gone. I mean, again, it took a pick 6 to really put this game away. There was a chance that Northern Colorado hangs with Idaho as close as they hung with Cal Poly. Like that's a fair complaint to have when you go out and you see Idaho beat the number 4 team in the country, beat the number 2 team in the country. Like it is fair to complain about one of the worst teams in the FCS somehow hanging with Idaho.
No, C. Hansen also hits a point we failed to talk about. How many penalty yards did we have? We kept extending their drives. That's C. Hansen in the comments section. Idaho 8 penalties for 70 yards, and just all of them seemed like UNC did their version of capitalizing on them too.
3 first downs given by penalties from Idaho today.
And multiple for like giving UNC 1st and 5. And for a team that doesn't want their quarterback to pass more than 5 yards, you cannot ask for a better setup. But look, we were talking about this being essentially a hangover game, Dallas. Look, if you're going to have a hangover, look, the best route to that hangover, guys, it's Snake River Stampede Canadian whiskey, and it's not close. Whether you go for the Snake River Stampede or if you go for the 1915 small batch edition, both are home runs. There's no prayer I'm pouring my small batch tonight to celebrate this game. But if you get the Snake River Stampede, its double barrel finishes, first fill bourbon, then Oloroso sherry casks. The 1915 small batch is aged an additional 2 years. Its double barrel finish is first fill bourbon, then ex-Canadian rye whiskey casks. You can't go wrong with either. They're 2 of the best buys in Idaho State liquor stores. Give Snake River a shot.
With that, guys, I think I know who we're going to suggest, but Marten, player of the game, offensive, defensive, both, neither, whatever you want to go with. The floor is yours.
I think I've only got one, and it's going to be Exree Alexander. I could, if I was going to be picky and choose an offensive guy, it would be Hayden Hatton. But for me, I think it just was since X led the team in tackles, and as a true freshman, that's who my player of the game is.
So we'll lead with defensive player of the game. I'm going to go with Tommy McCormick. Now, part of this is because I feel like I keep feeling every week after we do this, like that I, in retrospect, should have picked Tommy McCormick as a defensive player of the game. Has 11 total tackles, seven assists, 4 solo. I mean, we talked about how even though Fari had more yards than we think we should have, the team was held 3.6 yards per carry. McCormick was a big part of that. McCormick, Eck in his pregame show said that McCormick was essentially going to be playing some outside linebacker for this game just based off the matchup. So that's who I'm going with. The other, I know who I wanted to go for the other because of one play, but I'm gonna let you go that route if you want to, Dallas.
Yeah, I'll go with defensive player of the game, Marcus Harris, all because of that pick six. I was going to be kind of a dickhead and pick him as the offensive player of the game, but I'm not going to do that because I do think there are guys on the offense that deserve shout outs. But man, I thought X3 looked great. I definitely don't have a problem with that. Tommy McCormick looked really good. Again, Marcus Harris with the pick six to seal it. Treeb Talks jumping in to say Andrew Marshall should get an honorable mention. Corners have been great this year. That's something we don't talk about enough, I think. Think of where the DB play was 2 years ago and in the previous 5 years before that, and how Idaho had the worst secondary in not only the Big Sky, but maybe in the FCS. And then lo and behold, most of those same guys are still around. And the secondary has looked so much better under Rob Borisch and Stanley Franks and those guys. So, Brian, you're chuckling.
Right, no, I'm trying to not laugh my ass off at Matt Allen in the comment section saying three defensive offsides. I don't think it was crowd noise.
Yeah, no. This feels like a game the coaching staff's going to want back. Some of the play calling was maybe suspect at times. Again, just the penalties everywhere it feels like
weirdly
get yelled at a lot. What's that?
Offensive play calling was weirdly conservative.
Yeah, very much so, which was, again, not what you'd expect to see from, again, a Vandal team going up against the defense that, hold on, let me check the stats department, was allowing 35 points a game and almost 500 yards per game. Very weird to go as conservative as Idaho did, but again, a win's a win.
Yep.
I do want to shout out Crewhead 76. These are the best DBs we've had since Coach Franks played. Absolutely. And again, hashtag teachable moments to get everybody on the right track. To loop back to what my original point was, I know we've completely lost the plot here. Offensively, I got to give it to Tony Trees. Again, I think without Anthony Woods running the ball the way he did, man, what a stiff arm, by the way. One of the best stiff arms I've ever seen in college football. Absolutely dropped that kid. Textbook, just hand face, just put him back. I thought Tony Trees looked great today. Again, I think the guy's the best running back at this level of football. And I think that he is the drink, or he is the straw. Idaho is the drink. I think he is so vital to this offense that it's no wonder that when he started getting a little bit more play, all of a sudden the Vandal offense did start to wake up a little bit.
Yeah, Martin, your offensive player of the game.
Anthony Woods, but it's kind of for the same things that Dallas said.
Super George 111 says Duster is the straw that stirs the Vandal drink, which is correct. Man, I forgot my cup that's for me to try to use that straw. But anyway, my offensive player of the game is Hayden Hatton. Now I want to go back. I referenced Giovanni McCoy, and just said there was some weird play, some spots where I felt like McCoy wasn't as sharp as we're used to. But keep in mind, 72% completion percentage. That's if that's an off day, that's a pretty damn good off day. But Hayden Hatton with those, as referenced, had 6 catches, had the touchdown, over 100 receiving yards. He had some of his catches in the second. He had 3 huge catches in the second half. All 3 of them were huge. When he came down with them every single time, when Idaho's only up a score against UNC and you're anxious about another self-inflicted gunshot wound giving UNC a chance, and then Hayden Hatton catches a touchdown, or Hayden Hatton comes down like a 30-yard reception. That was my Xanax for today. So Hayden Hatton, he's my player of the game.
Long loved Tubbs, honestly, contributor at this point. Without the amount of food that's given out at tailgates, I like to think of you as a contributor, Jason. pointing out maybe the most important thing of the night. Freshman center, and we haven't said a single thing about him. Leighton Vining, shout out to Leighton Vining, stepping in for Eli Sanchez. And again, I don't recall anything being sloppy. I don't remember any bad snaps. I don't remember any just completely getting blown up by a nose guard or nose tackle. I don't remember any of that. So just to kind of put a bow on all of this, big shout out to Leighton Vining and the rest of the offense.
Yeah, some of the missed blitzes where they were corner blitzes that would have you would certainly say that had nothing to do with the freshman starting center. So no, like meaningful thing for you to bring up, Dallas. I think meaningful thing for us to acknowledge that since that first start against Montana, Vining has settled down quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, and I think this is what we kind of expected to see out of the offensive line as things have gone on throughout the Eck era. Again, we talked about it when he first came on the show right after he was hired, and he mentioned the offensive line at South Dakota was not like a whole bunch of 4-star recruits. It was just guys that just happened to they brought him in, a couple walk-ons even that just ended up being the hardest working guys and grew into being this stud offensive line. I mean, nothing against the guys that came before Eck, because again, we've seen some of those guys are great. I think Eli Sanchez, awesome. Abe Christensen has obviously just bounced all around and been a vital cog in keeping consistency going. But I think there's a reason that we're seeing a lot of these younger guys stepping in and doing well, because again, you're talking about Jason Eck, a guy who went and, if you saw it on Twitter, 40 snaps as the scout team offensive lineman this week. Like, obviously you're expecting the offensive line to grow and learn very quickly under Jason Eck. And I do think we see that every single week. The young guys get more playing time and succeed almost every time that they get it.
Yeah, so Dallas, any closing takeaways you have? By the way, Michael Marceau, a guy I know in the comments section, asking how many completions did Hatton have? And look, which actually which relates to a different point brought up by Idaho Real Estate. No more reverse plays in the red zone. Everyone knows it's coming. I do think a little bit of that version of, what is referred to as trickeration of some teams are starting to catch on to. But no, Hatton did not throw a pass this week. He did throw one against Montana State. But broad takeaways I have from this game, Dallas, are, to at least try to say something different than what we went over earlier, is I think it's easy at the fan level to have a big win and assume linear growth or assume a new baseline has been established. That's a fan issue. Keep in mind, these guys, Idaho plays a lot of young dudes. There is variability in focus, effort, all those kind of things week to week. I'm hoping that this week was, if this was Idaho's week to learn, hey, you're good, but you're not as good as you think you are. You can't just mail this one in. I'm okay with Idaho learning that while still picking up a W.
No, I fully agree.
Good God, Captain 58. That was actually a lateral move against Montana State, Professor. God damn it, Captain. Okay, rephrase to address Michael Marceau's question. The ball left the wide receiver's hand and traveled more than 5 yards on purpose. I think that's what he was trying to get at. But hashtag lateral move. My bad, Dallas.
No, you are more than welcome to jump in. Anytime there's a lateral move to discuss, we have to bring it to the front and center. Because that is the one thing to remember here. We're not talking about professional football players. We're talking about college kids. I don't know about everybody, but I'm going to make an assumption. Everybody listening to the show is probably pretty stupid between the ages of 17 and 22. We all did some dumb shit. I think every single person here can say they did some dumb shit. Guys, I'll be honest. I used to get made fun of because I didn't go to the club when I was a Vandal, and I got rightfully roasted for that. I didn't drink until 2 months after I turned 21. I'd never had a sip of alcohol before. And I know I did a bunch of dumb shit in college. Like, remember, these are college kids. Like Brian said, linear growth is not something you expect out of professionals, much less kids. Like,
you don't expect it out of humans.
Yeah, this is just what happens. Are we going to complain about it when, yeah, you should have beat this team by 50? Yes. Can we be happy that, like, hey, Idaho got the win, 7 wins is playoffs. Hopefully, again, on the track for 9. Hopefully, we're on the right track. I haven't heard from Treeb in a couple minutes, but hopefully, we're still on the right track to 9 wins. And then T-Cash jumping in the comments. Still am. Like, again, it's humanity. Like, dumb things happen. Things just don't work out the way they want. Idaho real estate. I was the king of dumb shit. Like, Roger Dorn, come on, man. No right track crap. Come on. The right track is the place to be. It's doing really well for us so far. Guys, I got nothing else. At the end of the day, Idaho got a victory. Yes, it was ugly. Yes, we hope to never see a performance like that again. But the win's the win. On to Weber State next week.
Yeah, last thing I want to hit on that this isn't football related, but we're not covering basketball until football's done. So just want to acknowledge, hey, Idaho has its season opener, head coach Alex Pribble's first game Monday, November 6th at 8 p.m. That's at WSU at Washington State. So, hey, Battle of Palouse is back on. That's cool. I have no idea if that game is going to be on at
Pac-12 Network.
Pac-12 Network. Thank you. Yeah, hey, that's some other Vandal news to pay attention to. We're going to record our episode covering the Weber State game this Tuesday because we have no other choice. But what I think people should consider as no other choice, if you want to support the show, patreon.com/Tubs at the Club, become part of our #OnlyTubs Discord.
Brian, if you want to get on the right track, you're supposed to join the Patreon.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. Yeah. If you want to get on the right track. So I got to say, I leaned pretty heavily onto the Discord today. This was the type of game where I was really happy to have a bunch of other Vandals who were having the exact same experience I was. Terrified that your Vandal PTSD was going to yield something material, but still like, hey, people ready to talk about what's actually happening in front of us, good or bad or whatever. Lots of inside jokes going on there too. #right track, Roger Dorn. So anyway, patreon.com/Tubs the Club. You can join for as little as $2.50 a month. We gladly accept more than $2.50 a month, but it's just $2.50 a month, guys. I absolutely, road games, you got to be there for it. See you guys there.
Guys, one last call out. Vandal Women's Soccer, Big Sky Conference Championship tomorrow, Sunday, November 5th against NAU. It's 12 o'clock Pacific time. Be there or be square if you're watching NFL and passed out watching Red Zone like I probably am. Make sure to put it on a phone, put it on a second screen, put it on a tablet. Support the ladies. With that said, if you ain't Vandal, Martin. No. Okay, fine.
Oh, good Lord, Martin. Okay. By the way, Simon Miller making me die over here in the comment section, watching Weber State versus Pocatello now, and it's like going from a funeral to a rave. Okay.
Fair enough. With that said, we'll be back, everybody, on Tuesday to preview Barbecue State University. Hopefully a little bit better performance that week. But again, we will break it down in full next week. As always, go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
This is producer Brian doing a terrible job of even finding what we're going to play us out with. So we're just going to call it good. See you guys Tuesday.